Welcome back, guys, to another video. I'm your host, Typical Pirate, and today we're going to take a look at some of your abysmal Skyrim hot takes. The last video got over 300 comments, filled with some of your hottest, coldest, and weirdest Skyrim takes. Today, I will go through some of my favorite takes, and I will tell you if I agree or disagree with them. As always, feel free to drop your hottest Skyrim, Oblivion Remastered, or Elder Scrolls hot takes in the comment section below for a chance to be featured in a possible Part 4. Before we begin, I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who commented in the last video. Even if I don't get to your hot take today, I still really appreciate your participation. Let's get started with the video. So our first hot take of the day is from Someone Silence 3731, who yet again makes his way into one of these videos. And he says, the Creation Club and the Anniversary Edition has made the game worse with adding overpowered content and a bunch of bloat. And I'd have to say I'm pretty neutral with this take. The biggest counter-argument to this point is that the Creation Club in the Anniversary Edition is completely optional. In fact, you have to pay $20 to get the Anniversary Edition. I think it's also hard to argue with the return you get in the Anniversary Edition. You get over 30 hours of content for $20. That's pretty good. You also get a ton of new weapons, gear, spells, and other items that you can use in every playthrough of the game. However, I do agree with you in the fact that a lot of it does feel like bloat and extra content that doesn't really have much weight. For example, I didn't really enjoy the Forgotten Seasons creation all that much. It felt like just a bunch of filler. But on the contrary, there are some creations like Necromantic Grimoire, which can completely change an entire playstyle, that being the Conjuration Mage. So I do think that there are ups and downs and benefits to both, but at the end of the day, it is optional, so I can't entirely agree with this take. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. The next hot take is from Aris Osman, sorry if I mispronounced that, who says, Skyrim modded will be a better playing experience than Elder Scrolls 6 will ever be. I guess I'd have to agree with this. The main problem is that we've just seen nothing on Elder Scrolls 6. There was one reveal trailer like 6 or 7 years ago, and besides that, there has been nothing. No gameplay, no concept art, no posts about any updates on the development of the game. And so, really we're left in the dark as to how good Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be. So, when we're looking at a comment like this, the only thing that we can really observe is Skyrim modded, and it is absolutely insane what people have done for this game. And I don't really think that Bethesda can top what people have modded into Skyrim. I mean, it sort of makes sense. Skyrim's been out for 15 years. People are still making mods every single day. And so yeah, I have no reason to believe that Elder Scrolls 6 will be better than modded Skyrim, but only time will tell if the game ever comes out. The next hot take in this video is from TDogOfficial540, who says, Skyrim is one of the two greatest single-player games of all time. The other one, that Skyrim gets compared to a lot, is The Witcher 3. Now, I'm actually pretty neutral with this take, and that's because I agree with half of it, and I disagree with the other half. So, let's break it down. This may be a hot take on its own, but I personally believe that The Witcher 3 is the best single-player game of all time. Even 10 years after its release, it still holds up the standard for what a single-player game should look like in this industry. Everything about it, the world, the monsters, the graphics, the people, the dialogue, it's just all insane, especially for a game made 10 years ago. Now, for the second part on your hot take, saying Skyrim is the second best game, I disagree. I think it's a very strong title, and it's definitely been one of the most influential games of our generation. But as time goes on, the industry grows and better games are being made every year. It's just hard for Skyrim to compete with games like Red Dead Redemption 2, God of War, Elden Ring, and even other collections of games such as the Metro series or the Borderlands series, except for Borderlands 3, do compete as well. So in conclusion, Skyrim was a revolutionary game when it came out, but in 2025, it's just difficult to call it the second best single-player game of all time. But if you think that Skyrim is the second best game of all time, more power to you. It's an incredible game that has aged wonderfully in these last 15 years, so yeah. The next hot take is from Grove0721, who says the Ebony Mail, specifically the Skyrim version, is one of, if not the worst, of the Daedric artifacts. and I would have to disagree with this one. Now, I do have a video up on the channel where I ranked all of the Daedric artifacts from worst to best. Feel free to check out that video if you want to see my own opinion on the Daedric artifacts. But right now, I can name 5 Daedric artifacts that are definitely worse than the Ebony Mail. The Savior's Hide, the Mace of Molag Bal, the Ogma Infinium, the Ring of Hircine, and the Ring of Namira are all worse than the Ebony Mail. The Ebony Mail has a solid armor rating of 45, which is slightly better than regular Ebony armor, and it has one of the best enchantments in the entire game. The poison effect is pretty solid because there aren't a whole lot of enemies that are immune or that can reduce that damage, so no matter what you're fighting, it's going to be effective. The Ebony Mail isn't the best Daedric artifact in the game, but I think it's an exaggeration to call it one of the worst. The Ebony Mail is a pretty solid armor piece for any player who is using a heavy armor build. So yeah, that's my opinion on the topic. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think of the Ebony Mail, and let me know if it is really one of the worst artifacts in the game, because I think it's quite solid. Thanks for your comment. Let's move on to the next hot take. The next hot take is from a random pigeon 1031 who says, Morthal is one of the best designed hold capitals. I'd have to slightly disagree with this. Morthal for the most part is fine, it's just a small town, whatever. The problem with it, in my opinion, is that there's nothing unique about Morthal. The architecture is bland, the people are bland, the whole city is just bland. I guess that's one word used to describe Morthal. So, for it being near the middle of the map, I really expected it to be a little bit more interesting. The vampire quest there was great. It's one of the best quests in Skyrim in my opinion. However, that's all Morthal has going for it in my opinion. I think it would be a lot better if they had something to do with the Civil War, maybe if there's a battle that took place there, a few more notable quests maybe a couple cooler followers, but besides that, Morthal is just okay. And I really expected it to be much, much more, especially for it being almost in the center of the map. But, Morthal isn't the worst capital in Skyrim. I definitely think that there are other ones like Falkreath that really have no place in the game. But Morthal is okay. It's definitely more in the middle, maybe the bottom of the list in terms of design for me. It's just too bland, and it has no significance in the game, in my opinion, except for that one quest. So, thanks for the comment. Let's move on to the next hot take. Next up is a comment from Captain Mexico 4422 who says, Sovngarde was a bit disappointing to look at, and it didn't feel as epic as described. I definitely have to agree with this. I think Sovngarde was one of the most disappointing parts of Skyrim, and it was built up to be this grand thing, and you only spent 10 minutes there defeating Alduin, and then you leave. I really think it could have benefited from more quests, more things to do in Sovngarde, more people to talk to, maybe even a unique follower or something that you could get from Sovngarde. I think that would be really sick. And if we ever get a Sovngarde equivalent in the Elder Scrolls 6, then I think that would be really cool. So yeah, I just wish there was more of a reason to stay in Sovngarde, at least for a little bit. Doesn't have to be a whole lot, but there should be some reason to stay, and I wish you could even come back to Sovngarde too, but unfortunately you can't. And I think that's a huge missed opportunity from Bethesda. Still, I want to at least acknowledge that Sovngarde does do its job, especially if it's the first time you play the game. I thought it was really cool the first time I played. It was just one of the more memorable moments, defeating Alduin in Sovngarde. But besides that, it was pretty forgettable, and I really wish there was more to do in Sovngarde. Thank you for the comment. Let's move on to the next hot take. Up next is a take from Bredery8356, who says, Becoming the leader of every faction in a single playthrough is not only unrealistic, but it ruins immersion and weakens replayability. So basically what he's saying here is that you shouldn't be able to join every faction and become the leader of every faction in Skyrim like you normally can in one single playthrough. I would have to slightly disagree with this take. While I do think it is a little bit unrealistic for the player to be able to join all these groups and become the leader and all that, there isn't really a high level of conflict between these groups. For example, in the Fallout games, I'll use Fallout New Vegas for an example, you can't join every faction. This is because most factions in Fallout New Vegas have a conflict of interest of some sort with other factions. So, for example, you can't be idolized by both the NCR and the Powder Gangers because they are hostile toward each other. you can't join Mr. House and keep the Brotherhood of Steel alive because, well, they have a conflict of interest. So, in that game, they can get away with not having the player being allowed to become the leader of every faction. But in Skyrim, where there is no conflict of interest between parties, it's actually kind of more unrealistic if he can't join every single faction and complete all their quests. So I disagree with this take. I do see where you're coming from, but when applying actual logic to this kind of take, I feel like it's actually more unrealistic if the Dragonborn cannot join every single faction in the game. This, of course, excludes the Civil War questline because, well, you have to pick a side in that one. But I think it does make sense for the Dragonborn to be able to join all the factions in Skyrim. Thanks for your take. Let's move on to the next comment. This next take is from Ascar65, who says, Skyrim is the weakest Elder Scrolls game. I'd have to slightly disagree. Of course, this one is super subjective. So, I think, honestly, the Elder Scrolls Online is by far the weakest Elder Scrolls game. There just wasn't that much impactful content in that game. No crazy stories, at least from what I've played. Gameplay was alright, but it just felt like an ability spam type game, and that wasn't really that much fun. And so, I think it really is the weakest Elder Scrolls. If you don't count Elder Scrolls Online, I'd honestly have to go with Morrowind. I didn't really play a whole lot of it. I liked it, but not as much as Skyrim. I think I just had way more fun playing Skyrim than Morrowind. Oblivion was solid, very good title, I loved it. I love the remaster, by the way. They did a really good job with it. As far as Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, that game came out so long ago, it's very hard to compare that with Skyrim and other Elder Scrolls titles. So I do think Morrowind is the weakest one, at least from when I played it. I'm sure it's a great game. A lot of people tell me it's really good. But that's why, this take is very subjective, and I don't really think that there is a finite weakest Elder Scrolls game, unless you include Elder Scrolls Online. I definitely 100% think that game is the weakest Elder Scrolls title, especially for the time it came out. But that's just my opinion. Let me know down in the comments below, what is the weakest Elder Scrolls game? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Thanks for the comment. Let's move on to the final hot take. The last hot take of the video is from GUH1916, who says, Lydia is one of the worst followers in the game. I know Lydia is one of the biggest memes in the Skyrim community, but realistically, I just don't get the hate that Lydia gets. She's a little bit annoying with her voice lines, but besides that, she's fine. She's a solid follower for the early to middle game, but after that she becomes pretty obsolete. So, I think she's a fine follower, and I think she's overhated a little bit too much. Especially when we have followers like Koznak, who's literally just a drunk. That's his entire personality. I know Lydia seems like a brick wall sometimes, but at least she has soberness going for her. I don't know. I think she's fine. I don't really think she's one of the worst followers in the game, but I do think that there are a lot of other better options other than Lydia to use in your playthroughs. Thank you for the hot take. I really appreciate it. That concludes the third episode of Skyrim Hot Takes. If you've enjoyed the video, please leave a like on the video. That's a free way to help the channel out. Again, feel free to drop a comment down below if you have an Elder Scrolls related hot take for a chance to be featured in a possible part 4. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.